folks. Hope y'all are doing well. Thank you for joining me for this webinar called Addressing Bad Behavior in the Moment. I did this webinar live this morning, but neglected to record it. So you're getting this recorded version absent any input from this morning's participants. So apologies for that. It'll be a little bit briefer, but you will get all the content, and I will be sending out the PowerPoint for you to use at your leisure. But this should take maybe 25 to 30 minutes. Thank you for joining me. My name is Lane Mears, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Leader and Culture Development. I'm going to skip the Slido. So I'm going to start this with an anecdote from my previous career. I worked for an international development agency for the U.S. government. My last post was in Jordan, the Middle Eastern country right between Israel and Iran. As you can imagine, it's a bit of a tough place right now, but I was there from August 2024 to May of 2025, leading a team of 11 very professional, top-notch people. And as is the case in Jordan, it was a religious mix on my team. We had 7 Muslim people and then 4 Christians on the team, and then myself as the leader. And while the team got along across these religious lines very well for the most part, there was a bit of a conflict between 2 people. The 2 senior leaders on the team had a history of conflict. One was a Christian man who'd been with this agency for 25 years, very well respected, very intelligent, very well connected with the people, the government in Jordan and across the embassy, carried a lot of gravitas. And then the woman, my second senior leader, was a Muslim woman who'd been, again, with the agency for 20 years, very smart, very well respected in her field as well, both with the host government and within the embassy. But these 2 had a history of conflict, partially because of the gender dynamic, perhaps some because of the religious dynamic. But predominantly because of some of the way my male senior leader tended to conduct himself in some of our team meetings. Now, when I came into the job in August of 2024, I had been told this many times that there was this dynamic. It did affect the team, and that it was my job to try to manage that divide well, to bring the team together, to help those 2 work more healthy together. And so I did. I went in August, met with each one of them individually, built a rapport with each of them, and thought I had a good working dynamic, not only with those 2, but with the team writ large. About 3 months into my job, we had a staff meeting where we were talking about a particular issue. And people were weighing in with their thoughts. My senior Muslim leader, Kenana, was giving her opinion. And at that point, George, the Christian man, cut her off and did so in a way that communicated that her opinion was incorrect or not a valid one. Now, it wasn't done in a way that was like really rude or a big deal to me. So I observed it, I recognized it, and what I did at this point in the morning seminar was asked, what would you do if you were in that situation with that history between these 2 people, that type of a situation in the meeting, somebody cut one off, another one off, history of tension between these 2, created a subtle reaction in Kenana and her colleagues on the team. What would you do? How would you address that in the moment? I confess, I think I dropped the ball. I noticed that he had cut her off, and I noticed the tone didn't seem entirely appropriate, but I was surprised. I hadn't anticipated this because I hadn't seen it in the 3 months in our team meetings. And so I had this thought, what do I do? I just went on with the meeting. I did not address it in real time in the meeting. After the meeting, Kanana and her number two came and talked to me, visibly upset at what had happened. This is inappropriate. He's doing the same thing over and over again. We're going to file a complaint. And so I talked with them, apologized that I did not address it in the moment, that I'll have a conversation with him. I did have a conversation with George and um, pointed out what I observed, that he cut her off in a fairly dismissive way, that, I recognize the history between you two, but that just wasn't appropriate. What I need from you is to, as a senior leader on this team, to comport yourself in a way that's going to breed team cohesion and just communicated my expectation. I'll share a little bit more at the end about this, but I really feel like it was a miss on my part. I could have done much better job of addressing the bad behavior in the moment. Um, because this principle is true. Leadership is not demonstrated by avoiding uncomfortable moments. It's demonstrated by protecting the culture amidst uncomfortable moments, because our responses as leaders send a message, not just to the person who's behaving badly, but to the rest of the team as well. What is permitted, what the norms are, and what kind of leader I will be. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to engage in these uncomfortable moments in a team dynamic in the moment, to not to shame anyone, but to address bad behavior, correct it, but in a way that uh, builds team cohesion, builds team respect. Because failure to confront negative behavior is subtle acceptance of it. And leaders communicate by what they say, what they reward, and what they allow. And people on our teams learn more by what we allow. And so, what we don't want to allow and permit and tacitly condone bad behavior. And so, it's our responsibility as leaders to develop this skill set, this mindset of being able to address bad behavior in the moment. I did ask the group, what keeps us from speaking up when we see bad behavior at work? What things go through our mind that prevent us, that stop us from calling it out? And these are some of the answers that came up on the call. The fear of retaliation, it's uncomfortable, it's sudden, and we freeze. We don't know what to do. We need a minute to manage our reaction. It's awkward. We don't want to embarrass people. I'm not sure I have the confidence as a leader to do this. All these things. I think each of us has probably wrestled with this type of emotional or intellectual response to being in a meeting when this happens. And so these are all very real things that do prompt a hesitation in whether or not and how we respond. Why is this? Is because our brain functions a certain way. When we see bad behavior that is awkward and raises the stress level in a room, it puts us into amygdala mode, which means our brain wants to freeze, wants to avoid the discomfort or the confrontation, or it wants to appease, just to make it go away, even at the cost of resolving it. If we can just appease it, make it go away, our brain wants to go to that place. But that's not who we want to be as leaders, I'm sure. None of us want to be that leader who just ignores it, sweeps it under the rug, or tries to appease it. The best leaders don't lack this discomfort, but they prepare for it. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we can prepare as leaders for these types of moments. And so one way to prepare is to think through the possible displays of bad behavior in our team meetings or team settings and decide in advance what types of things will prompt different responses from us. And one way to think about this is to just list different types of behaviors in columns, which I will do on this slide, that will dictate the level of response that we have to various shades of bad behavior. So first column, I'm calling the green, things you can probably address later beyond the context of the meeting. A missed deadline, poor preparation, lateness, or even sloppy work. Things that are failures of work that may not rise to the level where we need to address it in the meeting in a group setting. The yellow, these are the kinds of things that probably do call for a response in the moment. Repeated interruptions, like my colleague would do, biting sarcasm, clearly meant to demean or put down another person, a dismissive tone, communicating disrespect, eye rolling. Those of us have kids are familiar with eye rolling, but it happens in professional settings too, and it does communicate annoyance and contempt for the one prompting the eye roll. And monopolizing discussion. Again, I'm sure we've all been in meetings where one person's strong personality may have tons of great value to add, good insight, but in a team setting, you really do want to solicit the viewpoints of everybody in the room. And so you may need to call out somebody, not call them out, may need to identify when someone is monopolizing discussion, take control, make sure that everybody gets a voice, but calling that out in the moment is probably appropriate. And then this last column are things that are clearly out of bounds and need to be addressed right away. Humiliation, personal attacks, harassment, bullying, discriminatory remarks, or threats. These are clearly across the line. We have no discretion really on whether these would need to be addressed in the moment or not. The left column and the right column, I think we could probably find some agreement on. The left, we can wait. Right, have to address it now because it's totally inappropriate. It's the middle column that causes us to freeze, causes us to have discomfort. Bad behavior, not clearly, criminal or going to bring HR into the conversation, but things that need to be addressed. And so that's where we're going to focus the rest of this webinar. And in preparation for this, I found this model I'm going to share with you called the CARE model, C-A-R-E, which will provide some tips on how to respond in the moment for those middle column type of offenses. The first one's very important. Calm the moment. You, as the leader, have great power to influence the emotional tone of a meeting when there is bad behavior. First of all, don't match their emotion. If someone's voice is rising, they're getting angry and they're getting louder, matching that tone is not going to diffuse the situation. Maintaining a calm, even keel, taking a breath, pausing, collecting your thoughts, slowing your heart, because in these moments, our heart rates notch up, our breathing tends to get more rapid. Taking a breath can calm us to help us to be able to respond in a manner that's appropriate to defuse, lower the temperature of the meeting. Slow your voice. Again, as we get emotionally spun up in these situations, we tend to speak more quickly, more loudly. But again, the emotional intelligence of being able to manage your emotions, channel them in a way that's going to bring a teaching moment, slowing your voice. And a simple thing is, an example here is let's pause for a second. I recognize things are getting heated here. Let's all take a breath. Let's pause for a second. That's a powerful moment for a leader. It's not going to solve the issue, but it's going to set the stage for the next phases of this resolution. But again, as we talk about a lot with a lot of our leaders across the system, emotional intelligence of a leader is is fundamental. Being able to recognize your triggers, the emotions that they bring up, and then finding ways to manage those emotions in a way that's going to be productive and not destructive is vital. The A in the care model is then address the behavior. So once you've responded calmly, paused, taken a breath, controlling your voice, you can begin to address the bad behavior. Like with George, he interrupted. You could say, George, I see that you interrupted Kanana. I would like to hear what she has to say. Describe only what happened, not motives. George, you interrupted her because you don't respect her. No, only call out on what you observed, the interruption. Instead of saying you're disrespectful, you can say Jane was interrupted before she finished. Have an objective in this setting, in responding in the moment, have kind of an objective, calculated, this is what I observed. You can address the other stuff when we get to the end of this model, when you're doing one-on-one with the offender. But in the moment, call out what happened, not motives, just in order not to worsen things. The R is then redirect. And in this, you're stating the expected behavior. George, you interrupted Kanana. I'd like to hear what she has to say. And then you can say stuff like, let's allow everyone to finish. One speaker at a time, please. Let's keep disagreement focused on ideas, not on people. This is a powerful one because sometimes in meetings when you're talking about things that some people are passionate about, people can become very invested in their ideas, and pushback can seem like a personal attack. We've all been there, I'm sure. And this calls to mind when my wife and I were in premarital counseling 26 or so years ago. Very wise counselor told us that, in marriage, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have disputes, things are going to get emotional. It's totally natural. What he recommended when things really got into that state, find an object, like I just picked up this pen holder on my desk. Find an object, put it on the table, sit shoulder to shoulder with your spouse, and say, this is what we're talking about. How do we address this, the object, as opposed to, and just putting the issue that's emotional into an object that you're both viewing shoulder to shoulder. It's powerful in the way that kind of removes some of the emotion, some of the identity in the argument, and you can talk about that in a more objective or less emotional way. And that's what this statement is saying, essentially. Let's keep disagreement focused on ideas, not on the people expressing them. Another way to redirect here. So, you've calmed the room, you've identified the bad behavior, just said it was an interruption, and then you set the expectation. You redirect into what behavior is expected. There's no lecture involved, there's no shame, simply resetting expectations in the moment. And then lastly, this is for the follow-up, the one-on-one meeting with the person who did engage in the bad behavior. It's for engage later. It's a private conversation, one-on-one. You want to be brief. You want to be specific about what you observed. Again, you interrupted her in a way that came across as dismissive. You want to focus on impact. That caused her to shut down, and it totally deflated the conversation in the room. Let them know the effect of their behavior, because they may totally not have realized that their behavior was having that effect. Then you can move to the expectation. I know you have a lot to say, you have good ideas, but we're a team. Everybody needs to have input, and the expectation is that we will all hear each other out, consider all opinions respectfully, and reach a group decision. stating the expectation, remaining calm, again, is key. And it may get heated in that room. There may be some defensiveness. There was when I met with George after that meeting and I had this type of a conversation. You interrupted her in a way that felt dismissive. She shut down and it derailed our conversation. And George, you're a very well respected leader. You're well liked. This is not your default. My expectation is that you as a senior leader will be able to engage in these conversations respectfully, hear people out, and demonstrate leadership in the way that you have these contentious conversations. And remaining calm in the midst of it will have impact because you may have to say these things more than once about what happened, the impact, and the expectation. Oh, but there may be defensiveness, and this she did this and this. What I observed, the impact it had, and my expectation. But don't you see my point of view? I do, but this is what I observed. This was the impact, and this is what I expect. You may have to come back to that a couple of times. And eventually, I'm confident people will begin to hear that, receive it, and begin to change behavior. Some additional tips on that follow-up conversation from a different source, touch on some of the same things, expand on others. But again, describe what happened. Describe the impact. We've talked about that. Be curious. This is one that was not in the care model. The person that acted out in the meeting, that interrupted, that screamed, you never know. They may have something going on in their life that caused them to lose control. And so being curious, help me understand what was going on. They may have felt attacked. They may have whatever. That'll help give you compassion in a way that you can then coach and develop them to engage in their behavior in meetings more productively. But being curious is powerful. Help you understand the person and don't just write them off as a hothead. Well, they had something going on. Not to excuse the behavior, but to give you some compassion and understanding how you can better coach them to improve. Step 4, set expectation. We talked about that. And then 5th, this one's great. Express confidence. I know you're capable of that. George, you're a leader. You've been doing this for a long time. You've got good ideas. I expect you to engage in these conversations productively, to do it professionally, to let people finish. I know you can do it. That's a great way to end that conversation. And again, you may have to go from get all the way down to step 4 and then go back up to 1 and down to 4, then back up to 1 and 4, but you can always end it with, I'm sure, I know that you can do this and I'm here to help you. Some other tools for you on specific types of interruptions and bad behavior in a meeting. If someone's interrupting, you can say, hold on, I want to let someone, Sarah, finish her thought. If there's belittling, let's challenge ideas without attacking people, talking over others. Let's make sure everyone has a chance to contribute. This is a big one. You want to make sure that you get input from everybody. Raised voices are often a sign of passion and investment in the decision. They're not necessarily a bad thing, but they can lead to tension and diminished conversation. So you can say, let's slow down. Let's just make sure that we can understand each other and talk about this productively. If there's a dismissive comment, like, oh, that's stupid, when someone raises something, let's stay curious, not dismissive. This is the Ted Lasso moment of be curious, not judgmental. Let me know more about that. That doesn't make sense to me. Your comment or your idea, tell me more about that, is a much better response than that's stupid. And so you as leader can coach people into having that mindset. And then if someone's dominating the conversation, again, let's hear another perspective before we continue. So the closing reflection that I had for folks on the call was, knowing what we've discussed today, what would you do differently in future situations? If you are leading a team of 3, 15, 20, or even part of a team that has these moments from time to time, hopefully you've got some tools that you can use to address it productively in a way that um, acknowledges the bad behavior, helps the person displaying that to see the fruit of that bad behavior and what they need to do to change while also preserving team cohesion and productivity. Because people remember what leaders tolerate long after they forget what leaders say. Every intervention teaches the team what kind of culture you're building, and we all want to build a positive team culture. So I hope this has been useful. I will make sure to send the PowerPoint out to those who have registered for this webinar. If you have anything, any comments, I'm happy to receive those. Welcome feedback, advice on this topic or other topics that you would like me to address in some of these webinars. There's my email address. Thank you very much and happy leading.